everyone, welcome to the Thai Press. My name is Nahoho Rashid Matselele. Today my guest on this panel is none other than Mr. Elijah Eriga, an international relations expert from the Uganda Council of Foreign Relations. We are going to be talking about the issue of Israel and Palestine. We want to hear from him what has been done. How did this conflict come? What is the origin of the Israel and Palestine conflict? And what should be done to see that there is lasting peace between the two sides? Because as we speak now, the world is on the brink of a World War III. And if this conflict is not checked, the experts said that we are heading towards a catastrophe which humanity has never witnessed. Now, Mr. Reagan will be taking us through. I want him to say hi to the viewers and also to say more about himself. Yes, please.
Yes, thank you so much, host. My name is Reagan Elijah Eriga. I deal more in international relations, and I've been in the field of climate change, looking at climate diplomacy and policy. But at the same time, we in the Uganda Council on Foreign Relations, we are dealing with international relations, which I believe has been my field, and it is a career that I've been building. So I'm very glad to be hosted on this show, especially to talk about a pressing issue when it comes to Israel-Palestine, which I believe, as the moderator introduced, is leading the world to the time of a global catastrophe, which we are not even prepared for. So thank you so much, and I'm very much honored to be here.
Thank you. From the knowledge I have about you is that you have been on different international platforms, especially in the Arab world, and talking about peace and also issues concerning conflict, the Israel and Palestine conflict, which now has lasted for over 70 years. Some people say that this is a religious conflict, and others say it is a political conflict. What is your view?
So thank you so much. I know there have been contrasting opinions when it comes to the issue of Israel and Palestine, and so many opinions and so many doctrines have been put outside there. And most of the times people want people to talk about what they want to hear, which is not correct. Because for us who have been in this field, especially me, was interacted with Arab scholars, scholars who are trying to do something to try and see that there is a peaceful resolution between Israel and Palestine. At least I've been able to get their insights, and I've been able to read a lot of literature. I've been able to interact with different leaders in the Arab world. But I want to start from the historic context, because for us to understand really Israel and Palestine, we have to go back to history. This conflict predates the birth of Jesus Christ and even Prophet Muhammad. Like, it is older
than these two people.
These two people whom we all look at as chairs of two faiths, that is Christianity and Islam. And it also predates the birth of Moses.
Yes.
Because when you look at Judaism, they believe so much in Mosaic law, so in the Old Testament. So when let's trace Israel and Palestine from Noah.
Yes.
Because when before the floods and after the floods, Noah had 3 sons. That was Ham, Shem, and Japheth.
Yes.
So one day Noah gets drunk, and in his drunkenness he goes to sleep naked in his tent. And one of the sons, Ham, goes and sees his father and probably comes out laughing and informs the rest of the two brothers. So these brothers, like, because of fear and seeing what had taken place,
Yes.
so they get, I think, a bed sheet, and they come and try to cover their father.
Yes.
So when he wakes up, he's like, okay, so there was someone who was laughing at me. So he pronounces blessings and curses. So he cursed Ham, he blessed Japheth and Shem. So when you look at Ham, of course, biblically and according to what has been written by different historians in that context, you are going to see that like the origin of blacks, we come from Ham. And then when you look at Europe, America, that is Japheth. And when you look at now the Middle East, from the Persian Gulf, that is Iran, coming Israel-Palestine, where? So those are descendants of Shem. Now, what happened after that incident is that Noah starts dividing land to his 3 sons. And of course, Ham was given Africa, but at that time, Ham had a son called Canaan. So, Canaan is, in a way, is stubborn. Like, he refuses to follow his father to Africa, because now Africa at that time was called Kush, that is Sudan. So when Ham migrates, of course Canaan stays in the place that is called Canaan. So and then Japheth moves to Europe. That is where we see his descendants. Then Shem, that is Israel, Arabs. So that is where all they are concentrated. Now, it comes the time of Abraham. God tells Abraham, move away from, because Abraham comes from the Persian Gulf, that is Iran.
Yes.
So he moves for almost 10 years to come into that region which we call today Palestine. So when Abraham comes, of course he finds original inhabitants in that place. And
that is now Palestine.
Yeah, so he finds these Canaanites, who are the descendants of Canaan, the son of Ham, who refused to migrate, to move away, and to come to their original inheritance. So when they come, when he comes, of course, he finds people there, and he starts settling and mingling with those people. And of course, that is the land that God had promised him, biblically. And there reaches a time when the descendants of Abraham move away to Egypt. And then after 430 years, they move back. That is when Moses comes into the play. So they go back, they fight. The people were there, the Canaanites, the Jebusites, and yes, they finally settle. Then comes the time of King David. So David comes and declares Jerusalem, which is a point of contention in this war. Jerusalem, like the capital of Israel at that time. But Jerusalem originally it belonged to the Canaanites and the Jebusites. And after David, then we see King Solomon, who comes to build the temple on that Temple Mountain.
Now, I want to know, what was, before 1948, what was Palestine like? Who were the people in? Were they only the Muslims, or it was a mixture of people from different religious backgrounds, but Palestine?
So after the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ, that was around 70 AD, because Jews were still in that area, which was called Israel at that time. So now, because now even during the time of Jesus, the Romans were in charge. And Jews were anticipating for a political Messiah, someone who would come and save them from Roman rule, so that they can have they can go back to their kingdom. So they become one and they be a big kingdom, which didn't happen in Jesus' time, because I think Jesus had completely a different agenda, far from what the Jews at that time anticipated. So what happens is that around 70 AD, Jews are resisting Roman rule. And in that resistance, because one thing that the Jews, they are very proud. They have that kind of pride that they are a chosen race. So they cannot be under any culture, they can't be under any doctrine, and they cannot be under anyone. So because their God is chosen people. So that has been their belief from the time of Jesus and up to now. That is always like their belief. So what happens is that the Romans see it that the only way to deal with Jews is to destroy the temple, that temple mountain, which is the point of contention up to now. So the temple that was constructed by King Solomon. So what the Romans do at that time, in 70 AD, they completely destroyed that temple. And the following years, we had very brutal emperors like Emperor Adrian. So Emperor Adrian declared that Jews must be out of that region, out of Israel and out of Palestine. So we start seeing like the hunting of Jews, and because of fear, they start dispersing to different areas. So the emperor at that time, after completely destroying that temple and destroying, like, now Jews have scattered, now it declares that area, which was now called Israel at that time, it declares it Palestine.
Okay.
So it becomes Palestine.
Under the Roman rule?
Yeah, under the Roman Empire.
Okay.
The Romans, that was the Roman culture and Roman doctrine now running that place and everything. And even the Christians at that time were being hunted by the Roman Empire. Okay. So they were also running, so fear. So things were not clear. So now comes the birth of Prophet Muhammad.
Okay.
So where he begins Islam, way from Mecca up to Medina, when he starts getting revelations from God, and also revelations about the Quran, everything. So that's when we start seeing like Islam coming up. And now we see that Islam spreads all the way from Mecca, Persia, it comes all the way to Palestine at that time. So by the time Prophet Muhammad comes in, the Roman Empire was already weak, and actually it had divided. There was the Eastern Roman Empire and the Western Roman Empire in Constantinople. So, but it was now weak. So there was no clear leadership. So that's when Islam comes in and takes over. So Prophet Muhammad, I believe, was a peaceful man, and for him was looking at spreading Islam, the message of Allah, to different nations, and also bring that entire region together under Islam.
Yes.
So now it came like after his death, like the followers who came in, at least they started now building the Muslim empire, and now like that political empire. How does Islam now intersect into politics, into leadership, and into governance? So after his death, we see that around 600 something, we see now Muslim leaders coming up, people like Suleiman, the Magnificent, and others, who come and when they take over Jerusalem, because now Jerusalem was a religious center of the world. The world is a religious center.
Yes.
So, and it had so many religious rites.
Now, had the Jews come back or now?
No, the Jews have now scattered.
Yes.
They are nowhere to be seen. Yes. They are now in Europe, Russia, where. Yeah. So they have completely scattered. So now Islam takes over. The Romans are taken over. Islam now takes over. And now where the place where the temple, that temple mountain, where the original temple was built, because the Romans had destroyed it. So when these
you are talking about the Temple of Solomon.
Yeah, the Temple of Solomon.
Yes.
So when this generation that came after Prophet Muhammad, the likes of like Suleiman, the Magnificent, he was a great Arab leader at that time. So they come and build on that temple mountain where the temple was. They built what we call the dome of the rock.
Yes.
That was the first, I think, one of the first Muslim worship places that were built at that point. So the moment that was constructed, so Islam started claiming. So it had now a claim
over that land.
Over that land.
What I want again to know is when Islam took over that place, was it a state owned by only Muslims, or there were it was an Islamic state, but also having other people who are not Muslims?
Of course, when Islam came in, there was resistance to Islam.
Yes.
And because not all Jews had migrated,
Yes.
some had stayed during that time of the Romans.
Yes.
And they endured everything. So when Islam came, there was resistance to Islam. So when they conquered, so they started passing laws, like to bring order.
Yes.
So and one of the laws, like for you to, because if you were non-Muslim, like you were imposed to high taxation.
Yes, yes.
So for you to live peacefully in that region, you have to become Muslim. So that's when, like, you saw that some of the Jews at that time became what? Muslims.
Yes.
So now the culture, the religious culture at that time was now Islam. Though some people, some Jews stayed to their Judaism, but most of them like married into that Islam culture. So some of the Palestinians are Jews but Muslims. Yeah.
Okay.
And some Palestinians are just Arabs but not Muslims. Yeah, because
and maybe there were also Christians within the Muslim state.
Yeah, there are also Christians within the Muslim state. Why
I'm so interested, because most people think that the area territory of Palestine was just composed of only Muslims.
No, that is wrong.
Okay.
That is wrong. Because when Umaru comes in and others, there was already Christianity, and there was the bishop of Jerusalem at that time. So when he comes in, they make treaties like coexistence of these religions. That yes, we shall recognize what? Christianity. We shall preserve the sites for Christians here, because they are also like along that Temple Mountain. There are also religious, like Christian sites that Christians always go and visit. So it wasn't only that Islam, but because of the agreements and negotiations made at that time, you find that like all these religions coexisted
together.
Yeah, but Islam was leading.
The dominating.
Yeah, was the dominating religion at that time, and I think the law was under Sharia law because Muslims were leading at that time.
Now we see that what you've given us, that we see a coexistence of Muslims, Jews, and Christians in Palestine.
Yes.
Who brings the disorder of now saying that now Palestine should now belong to only the Jews or the Israelites?
Yeah, so where the disorder comes in is now during World War I and World War II.
Okay.
Remember, the Jews had already scattered. And wherever they went, of course, other nations did not like them. Like being near a Jew, it was very difficult because first of all, they have pride. You understand? And second of all, like when they enter into business and anything, they do it to the best of their ability, that they can dominate any economy whenever they are, because they can make a lot of money. And when they entered into Europe, they ventured into business, politics, and they had a lot of money, so they could influence decisions, they could influence anything at that time. So you find that even in Russia, where they went, like when these revolutions happened in Europe from 1848, one of the questions was the Jews. There was the hunting of the Jews. So when World War I breaks out, of course, Jews also participated in that war. And one of the reasons why they participated, like they wanted to find a way of going back to their original land. Remember now, that was those were over hundreds of years. They have not been in their origin. They have been just scattered. So in World War I they fight, and of course the aggressor at that time was German. But then a person who brings up this so much hatred about Jews was Hitler, who elevates it, because for him he publicly made a declaration in 1941 during the Munich conference, the Munich summit, like if we are to have peace in Europe and if we are to be prosperous in Europe, we need to eliminate the Jews. And that's when they come up with an idea of concentration camps, like putting Jews in concentration camps and also killing them with toxic gases. So in that instant, most of the Jews start now migrating from Europe and they ran to the United States, which was now like more of like a safe haven for them. So when they were in Europe, they were already into military business and they had money.
Yes.
So when they got to the United States, at that time the president was Franklin Roosevelt. So the likes of Albert Einstein,
Yes.
and his group, they write to Roosevelt. They tell him that Europe is developing an atomic bomb, which is going to be a bit disastrous. And of course, at that time, Germany was good in technology, developing advanced weapons. So when they sell the idea to President Roosevelt, of course, they come up with what we call the Manhattan Plan.
Manhattan Plan.
Yeah, the Manhattan Plan. The Manhattan Plan is a plan that made the first atomic bomb. That destroyed Japan, Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Okay.
So when President Roosevelt saw that their plan, their idea to develop that atomic bomb had solved World War II for good and forever. So until the elevated
World War II or one?
World War II.
Yes.
So until now elevated the US, the United States, as a superpower.
Yes.
So it gives them now Jews start taking up very powerful places in the army, in the arsenal of weapons. So
that is after World War II? Yeah,
after World War II. Okay. So they are employed because of their capability, their knowledge and their capacity. So now they start getting that kind of elevation. And even after, they start entering into US politics. Now, where this now becomes a political cause or a political crisis now comes in after World War II.
Okay.
Because now after World War II, the Jews have become very powerful in the United States. They are into the army, they are into nuclear weapons, they are into nuclear energy, they are into business, they are now into politics, and they can even influence some US politicians to come into power. Now when you look at the person who came in after Roosevelt, that is President Truman. All his campaigns were sponsored by Jews.
Okay.
And Jews, some of the things that they agreed on that time is we want to go back to our original land. You get? So those are some of the promises that were made. So
by the politicians in the US? Yeah,
by the politicians in the US, especially when it came to Truman's campaigns coming to power in the United States, his first term into office. So around that time we have the United Nations. So the politicians in the United States say, look at now, how do we take back the Jews back to Palestine? Because now there was already the Arab questions. The Arabs wouldn't agree, Muslims wouldn't accept to such an idea. So how do we take them back? Because we have to pass through the United Nations. We have to come with all nations. All nations have to come together, who were now independent at that time, to try and we see that these people go back. At that time, what we must understand, why this took more of a political direction, is one, the US was the superpower at that time. Yeah. Most European nations had been weakened by World War II. At that time, there was the Marshall Aid Plan. The Marshall Aid Plan was to support any European nation or any nation that had been affected by World War II, to recover, to come into economic recovery and political recovery, as long as you subscribe to capitalism.
Okay.
You get. So remember, most of these states, UK, France, where they were now weak, and now they needed the support of the United States. So, and now the Marshall Aid Plan was already now into place. So why the US was able to influence resolutions at the United Nations is because of that kind of superpower status it had at that time. And now also now Jews were now dominant in the US politics, and they could influence decisions. So when nations come up, of course, US being the superpower at that time, everyone had fear. They had seen what had happened to Japan if you resist US policy. You know what would happen.
Yes.
It had nuclear weapons,
Yes.
it had the money, it had everything. So many nations, I think, to agree to that resolution, to be clear and precise, some nations did not do it according to their will.
Okay.
But because of the status at that time. So, but when they came together, of course, the Arabs refused to be part of that resolution, Palestinians, because they had been called that let's try to forge a way forward between you and the Jews. And of course, like before even that time, Jews had already started going back to Palestine. They were now buying land, they were now into plantations, they were now becoming rich. So they had already gone back, but they were not yet a state. At that time, it was still Palestine, but Jews had gone back, so buying land.
So this one is all Zionist project.
Yeah, so that is the project. So they had gone back. So they started going back. They were buying land from Arabs, based on the status at that time. Most Palestinians were poor.
I believe they had a lot of money to influence these Arabs to sell.
Yeah, they had a lot of money, but the Arabs didn't know the plan behind this. That the initial plan is to make sure that Jews come back to their original homeland. And that is now 1948. That is over 900 years since Jews had been expelled from that place and they had scattered.
The strategy first was not to fight with the Arabs.
Yeah, to fight with the
But
Arabs.
to dominate them economically buy
yes.
their land.
Yeah, buy their land, yes.
Where now, I want now us to go to the where the fighting now starts.
So the fighting starts because now in that 1917 declaration, the Arabs were not consulted, and they didn't know that Jews had been given back Palestine, and anytime they would come back. So it was Russia. It was Russia that fell into that plan. And because Russia was also so much now promoting their communism, at that time it was communism, but the Bolsheviks were promoting communism.
Yes.
So they write in the Russian newspapers, like this declaration, and the Arab world gets shocked. They are like, hey, so we have been interacting with these Western powers, and this is the initial plan, so we didn't know. So from that time, they start rejecting any plan that is brought by any Western power. So during that resolution, most of the Arab nations refused to be part of it, even Palestine. So because now Palestinians were called, like, we are into a two-state resolution, so we shall recognize the Palestinian state as long as you agree to recognize the Israel state. Palestinians refused to be part of that resolution. Okay. So everything was done on table. So nations came in, they agreed to a two-state resolution, and that very day when they agreed, the following day, there was war in the Middle East.
Oh.
Yes. So that is when we started the 1948 Israel-Palestinian
conflict.
So now the Arabs now raise against Israelis who were in Palestine at that time. Because even at that time, like the map that was drawn for Israel was very small. It was a very small because Israel was given Mediterranean, and now Jerusalem was divided into two, Eastern Jerusalem and Western Jerusalem. So Eastern Jerusalem is where all religious sites are, including the Temple Mountain. So that was given to Palestine, and that hurt the Jews more because for them their main point is the Temple Mountain. The Temple Mountain, they still believe in the idea of the Messiah, and for them they want to construct the temple. The Messiah must come when the temple is already in place. So, but painfully they accepted it, and they accepted that very small part, Eastern Jerusalem, up to the Mediterranean, the coast of the Mediterranean.
So 1948,
yeah,
the Palestinian-Israel conflict starts.
Starts.
This is now I think, the full implementation of the Zionism project in Israel.
Yeah, it has been implemented by political means. And political means followed by military means.
Military means.
Yes.
That is 1948.
48.
Let's first stop there. For our viewers, we are now at a stage of the beginning of the Palestinian and Israel conflict. 1948, the full implementation of the Zionism project. Let's meet in another episode as Elijah Eriga continues now how the subsequent events come, what happens after, how does the occupation, the annexing of now different parts of Palestine, how did we arrive where we are today? Thank you. I remain as Nahoho Rashid Matselele.